We seem to be in what feels like a foldable frenzy right now, but for its first flagship phone of 2020, LG is trying something a bit more conventional. And I use conventional in the strongest possible air quotes because this is LG we're talking about. Their idea of conventional is honestly kind of weird. The new V60 ThinQ in a lot of ways capitalizes on what made the V series so popular in the first place, a focus on cameras, on content creation, and great battery life. And that's all here too. But it is LG, so we are working with these dual screens now too. Let's take a closer look. Right out of the gate, the LG V60 ThinQ has basically everything you'd expect from a modern flagship phone. That is a Snapdragon 865 chipset with 8 gigs of RAM, which is more or less on par with what you'd see out of the standard Galaxy S20. There are a couple differences here though, and they might not necessarily make the V60 a great choice for you. The main screen, for example, is a 6.8-inch display running at an aspect ratio of 20.5:9, so it's actually quite easy to hold in your hand, but it is full HD+. You're not getting the same sort of clarity that you'd get on perhaps some of the other premium smartphones of the year. Beyond that, we're also looking at a 5,000 milliamp hour battery inside, which is rapidly becoming what feels like the standard for premium smartphones with 5G support. LG has not given us a real clear sense of what this battery is capable of, but they do say if you have the G8 ThinQ, you can expect about 8 hours of extra runtime out of this thing. Although I guess that really depends on how much 5G you'll be using, and since we can't test that right now, it's really anyone's guess. Now, the design has gotten a bit of an overhaul too, which I think is actually really quite nice. They've gone with beveled edges around the side and a two-tone finish. In this case, we're looking at what LG calls the classy white with a sort of stainless steel trim around the side. There's also a classy blue with sort of a rose gold trim, which frankly looks a lot better. I can't imagine anyone choosing the white one over that, but that's almost besides the point. Compared to the G8X ThinQ from last year, we're actually working with fewer cameras. There's a 64 megapixel main sensor and a 12 megapixel ultra wide, which is perfectly fine. Really one of the nicest things about older LG flagship phones is that they really wanted to give you a sense of flexibility. So you had that telephoto for those really tight shots and those ultra wides for that really sweeping kind of landscape look that you need sometimes. This time LG has decided to combine that main camera and the telephoto, which sounds okay in theory, but in practical use leaves a lot to be desired. See, instead of getting any kind of optical zoom, instead of getting really lossless zoom, you're kind of just getting digital zoom all the way through. LG calls it crop zoom, which is fine, but we've been testing here on a roof in New York City. You're supposed to be able to get up to 10x zoom on your subject, which does objectively appear to be the case, but the quality leaves a lot to be desired. You'll notice a lot of soft edges, a lot of processing, to the point where, yes, you can shoot 10x photos, but would you really want to? Probably not. The safe spot here seems to be around 2x, which is fine also, but really not that spectacular compared to some of the ambitious cameras we've seen this year alone. There are a few other things we should note about this camera. It is able to shoot natively at 8K resolution, so if you want really high quality video, this might be a solid option for you, but I will say, this day that we have to work with has not yielded us the best photos or footage. More concerning than that is the sort of momentary delay, this bit of lag that I noticed when I started to shoot in full 8K. There's just enough of a delay between you moving the phone around and seeing the changes reflecting on screen that it kind of throws your workflow off. I kind of got used to it, but it really shouldn't be the case. You should not have to get used to something like that. There is also a new 3D portrait mode, which takes a lot of inspiration from a similar feature you might have seen on Facebook, when you're thumbing through your feed and you see a photo sort of moving around and getting a sense of the space around it. That's doable here too in portrait mode. It, again, works. I feel like that's the theme of this video. Everything works, but not super spectacularly. You'll see that effect pretty clearly, but you do also get these very strange masking effects. The phone uses the time of flight sensor on the back to calculate the depth between the foreground and the background, and you just sort of get these weird, sort of blurry, blobby spots where the subject used to be as you're sort of panning around. It's a little off-putting. But to consider the V60 ThinQ on its own merits as a standalone smartphone is to kind of miss the point entirely. LG so far has not released a foldable. It's been very quiet about its sort of big screen device plans, but it has pushed very heavily into the dual screen space with these cases that we started seeing trickling out into the market last year. Basically, the idea is you pay a reasonable price for a phone, you get a case with it that has a screen that you can attach when you feel like you need that extra screen real estate, and then you take it off and throw it into your bag when you don't. Again, another great idea in theory, but My issue with this device and this second screen is pretty much the same as the issues I had with the G8X when we reviewed that last year. Things do work. You can run a game controller on the second screen that's fully customizable, so it plays nice with basically any app or game that you want to use with it. It does also allow you to run a fully separate keyboard on that second screen, so you can bash out emails and text messages that much more easily. My problem is it's the little things. It's how you get that game controller running on the correct screen. It's how you choose which apps get to run across both screens instead of just one that feel really complex, needlessly so, I think. For example, the wide view functionality, which now has been updated to let you run, in addition to apps like Chrome, YouTube, and Gmail across both of these displays. That's a great thing, and you'd expect LG to want to play that up right from the get-go, but it doesn't. You have to dig into the settings, find it, enable every single app that you want to work with that feature, go back out, and start from scratch. It's cumbersome, to say the least, and without a little extra polish, the V60 ThinQ, like the G8X before, it feels a little confusing for the average consumer. That's not to say that this is a bad phone or necessarily a bad experience, although I will say, if you're watching a video across these two screens on YouTube or reading a website, this big, chunky bezel between the two halves of the screen gets really annoying really fast, but that's not new. This is a solid phone, just marred by very questionable decisions, the likes of which we've seen before. LG had a chance to fix some of these things, they just sort of haven't. To be fair, this is non-final hardware running non-final software, so there is a possibility that this could all be ironed out before this phone goes on sale. But do you trust LG to get that done? That's a question I think that's largely left up to you. Based on its track record, I don't know how much of these little issues will be ironed out before launch. The one saving grace here appears to be the same as the saving grace from last year's devices. If you buy a V60 ThinQ this year, at least for a while, you'll be able to get one of these secondary screens for free. I don't know what this phone is going to cost. LG has not told us yet. It's really a carrier thing, but I'm sure there are people out there who will look at the V60 as a device and the value that comes from the second screen that they will likely get for free and be pretty thrilled with what they're actually getting. But if you're looking for a thoughtful, elegant, well-rounded approach to this kind of dual screen paradigm we're now having to deal with, I'm not sure LG has cracked it just yet.